Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Wande. You may know me from music or other affairs such as social media, etc. And so we're here again with another episode of Win Radio, and we have some awesome guests. Today's episode is actually going to feature the women of Reach Records, some of the women you may not know who help Reach Records run.
I'm Katie. I head up our operations department, overseeing distribution, sync, finances, legal, basically everything that doesn't have to do with the creation of the music or the branding of the music.
My name is Dee. What I do at Reach is I'm the director of digital strategy and distribution, distributing the music out to platforms, making sure that it's delivered to Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, anywhere that you would stream music, building relationships within those platforms, also some digital marketing parts, which include advertising and email marketing as well.
Hey, my name is Khari Alamin, and I am the A&R manager at Reach Records. And basically, I'm making sure we got good music coming out. It's communicating with managers and making sure paperwork is done and contracts are in, all the good stuff to get people paid, to get people moving and dancing.
It'll be super exciting just to speak to these women, get to hear some of their stories, and I hope that you feel encouraged and led throughout today's episode. One thing that's really cool is just because I used to be an intern at Reach and then went on to work for Reach, and then now I'm an artist, I've gotten to know all these women, and so they're amazing, and it's just great having them part of the team. Definitely great energy, great personalities, and they're really diligent when it comes to their jobs. So we're going to get into our conversation for the day. So we're actually going to start off with lighthearted. So, y'all work for a music company. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I probably have my own musical interest in general. So I wanted to know, what do y'all listen to? Like, what have y'all been listening to in quarantine?
So I've been in a vinyl mood because I'm home and I'm not listening to it in my car. I've been ordering some more vinyls online to play around the house while working and stuff. So I'm a big fan of having like chill background music. So I've been listening to a lot of Sam Smith.
Oh, awesome. Oh, yes, a great singer. I recently developed a new talent to learn to play the piano. So Sam Smith and Bruno Mars have the best depressing songs to play on the piano.
Yes.
It's great. It's great.
Music wise, I've been trying to stay in a peaceful place. So I'm listening to rain sounds right now. Rain sounds, but on a musical tip, let's see, we've been listening to old school, little Stevie Wonder. I love Alex Isley. I've been listening to a lot of her lately.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Fire. Yes, you definitely need to stay peaceful, keep your emotions stable and everything.
Right.
I feel like since quarantine, my music tastes have been very just all over the place. I kind of like Khari. I have been doing, especially because we've been working from home, a lot of more instrumental stuff throughout the day, just to kind of focus. And so some lo-fi playlists. Mav City just came out with their new album, and I love them, and I just think it's extremely timely. So I've been listening to that for worship, and then right at the beginning of quarantine, J Balvin released his album Colores. And so I'm in between, I love to listen to Latin music when I'm cleaning. I mean, I listen to Latin music all the time. So I have a good variety of just reggaeton that I play most of the time. And then when I'm trying to chill, I'll just kind of, slow down.
I feel like that accurately describes your personality, because you're someone who's oh, I like to have fun. But then it's oh, wait, I'm being serious right now. I'm working. And so
you're right, Wanda. You just said that very well. I think that's very accurate.
I love it. All right, cool. And just for also another cool intro, question, I just wanted to ask, what have y'all been up to in quarantine besides work? What has consisted of your free time since you have to stay at home?
Well, I find myself more inspired to work on my home because I'm in it all day, every day. So just framing things, or painting and building a coat rack. I find that I think about it a lot more because I'm always around it. But yeah, I'm definitely ready for quarantine to end.
I can definitely relate to that. I've been on YouTube watching like DIY videos like crazy. I never had this passion, but now I have this passion to like have this thing called a IKEA Pax like shelf. It's like this like shelving system you can put in your house that like it just makes things look beautiful and you can have like a display. So now that's like one of my random goals for my house. But like
Oh, I
it's
need to
weird.
see this. I
Yes,
totally need to see this.
yes, it's amazing. Like you can literally it's one storage like that's immaculate, but then two like you can like so you can display it based on whatever your hobby is. So some people if you have like a book fanatic, then you can have like a beautiful display of books. Or if you like, you know, makeup and purses, you can put like purses. Like it's great, it's great. And I'm just like, wow, this is magical. So I learned
Um,
putting shelves right next to each other, white shelves, right? Like just right next to each other, it looks great. But IKEA has one that you can like you get drawers and stuff and stuff. So
oh, I'm totally looking that up. Next
home,
project for sure.
yep, home DIY. All right, Khari D.
I don't know. I try to read. That's one thing that I started off quarantine. Like, I'm gonna finish a book all like every week. But I didn't buy some new books, so I started on that end. What else have I been doing? I want to paint, but I haven't actually been doing that with all the best intentions, though. But I'm expecting a baby, so I'm more so trying to plan for a new life coming into this world and trying to get a room together and buy things and registry. So that's been my life lately.
Definitely understandable. I mean, you got a whole new life on the way. Feel free
The
to
whole
hit me with the
baby.
registry. Feel free to hit me with the registry link. I'll like get a little gift for a
Thank
child.
you.
So I came into quarantine thinking that I was going to take over the world. That has not happened. Clearly, I had so many things that I wanted to do. Like Khari, I also wanted to read a lot of books. I also wanted to write a lot. I wrote like 2 things, which is good, you know, a little bit of progress. And I finished one book, which I thought I was going to finish like 10. But, you know, there's some progress. But mostly, I have been doing a lot of research as well, kind of like what you guys were talking about DIY and home things. I'm actually moving into a new home in a few weeks. And so I've been getting excited about that, just figuring out like decorating ideas and researching, looking at furniture. So that's been fun. Actually, getting ready to move into a new home has been the majority of my time during this. So I am very thankful for being able to slow down and focus on that.
Super dope. Super dope. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, guys. So now we're going to get into our main question of the day. So essentially, all of y'all know because, you know, y'all work with the label. I recently released an album called Exit. And so the messaging kind of behind Exit was every exit is an entrance. And so in life, sometimes you may have things that look like exits. However, it's actually entering you into a new phase of life and actually bringing you closer to your final destination. And so with that, I just kind of wanted to ask y'all, just in the categories of your personal life and your career. So if you have 2 stories, feel free to share 2, but if you have 1, that's fine. What have been certain exits that occurred that seemed like the end, but God actually used to bring you somewhere greater? And so whoever feels like they have a story, feel free to go first.
So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I didn't really have a relationship with God because of my upbringing, somewhat like a true relationship, like, oh, I really know you, you're my dad, you know. I didn't have that until later in college, but for some reason I had this understanding of faith before then. And so I moved to Boston off of believing that I was supposed to go to Berkeley and Berkeley College of Music. And so nothing was planned out. I didn't have the money. It was just like, we're going to go for this full scholarship and just like believe that this is going to happen. And I've done it a few times at this point. So I did that with going to school and was able to get a full scholarship there. And then once I built a relationship with God, I prayed and realized I needed to move to LA after graduation. And my time in LA was a lot. It was beautiful. It was a struggle. I went through a bunch of stuff that I didn't know saying yes to this opportunity would bring me. And along the faith walk, I didn't realize it was going to be tests along the way, where it wasn't going to be super easy in it, and I was going to go through ups and downs. And I was working there in the industry, working in the business, and, building my resume and meeting people and things like that. And I had no idea when I moved to LA that I would leave only 2 years after being there. And God told me to move to Atlanta because my morals with the music that I was working on, my personal morals started to pour over into my business life. And I started to think like, I really want to push forward music and business that really supports what my core values are. And so I moved to Atlanta, and I just thought everything was over. I went through a lot. I went through homelessness before I moved to Georgia, and I didn't have a plan. I just knew I was supposed to be in Atlanta, and I had trusted God moving to Boston and moving to LA, and everything worked out. And it seemed like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Is this gonna, what's happening with my life? I've worked these great places, and now what? But the day that I got to Atlanta, not to officially move, but to just get to this side of the country, I got a phone call from a client that I had worked with previously in consulting. And he says, Reach Records is looking for an A&R manager. I, gave him your name. Let me know. And I was like, oh my God, God is real, like, what? Like, just, I could not have planned. I could not have thought. I could not have prayed that reality. I couldn't have. I just had no idea. I didn't know if I would just need to get a regular job and make it work. After leaving LA, and it's just a great opportunity to be here at Reaching to really put my passion towards music that I really believe in. It'll change the world and, edify people, but still make you feel good and have a good time. And, you dancing and, you may have a little turn up too, So it's just, that was a beautiful exit that I didn't know was beautiful until I actually stepped into the door.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can definitely envision like that was probably super scary in the moment, and you were like, okay, God, I know you're telling me to do this, but this is a lot.
Right. Like, where you at?
Yeah.
Are you here? Did you forget?
Yeah. And I think the craziest part is like, when you look at the Bible, right, we read people's stories, but we forget like they were actually living this out in real time, and they didn't know the ending. Like, we know the ending. So it's like, oh yeah, he went through all this suffering, but it's okay because things worked out. But them in real time did not know that it was going to work out. They're just kind of like, okay, God, I know you're going to come through. I don't know how long, but please come through. So
right. And people are looking at you as an example, like you profess this faith and stuff seems like it's falling through and not working out. And just to keep that faith and stay and just stand on what you heard from God and what you know about God, and trust that the door is going to open. And I couldn't have planned it. So shout out to the greatest author. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, back when I was 24, I had been a part of a ministry for about 6 or 7 years, and I was pretty committed to doing work with them. I love the Lord. I felt called into ministry. There were different aspects of it that I wanted to fulfill. I had a full-time job at a church doing, I was their creative director, and so I was doing that, but then I also, felt very led toward teenagers and mentoring and youth, and just different types of outreach as well. It started to become pretty apparent that that season was going to start to close, and I remember specifically being on a long drive by myself and just praying to God about some really difficult things that we had been walking through in that time, and feeling very led to just leave and kind of exit out of that ministry. And what was really hard is like, the people that I had been walking with during that season, I considered family. We were doing life together. And I knew that by me walking away during that time was going to hurt a lot of people, especially after I had been so committed to certain things. But, and this was all taking place in Colorado. And I remember specifically the Lord calling me to move to Arizona for a season and just kind of step back from some of the things that I had been focusing on. I remember praying and realizing that for the previous 7 years, I had an idea for what my life was going to look like. And it was specifically going to look like this. And it was going to be full-time ministry. And it was going to be done this way. And all of a sudden that was gone. And it was terrifying, but it was also really exciting because my life ahead of me became a blank slate. And the Lord was like, okay, now you and I get to talk about this. Like now you get to bring me into the conversation and we can decide I will show you the things that I have for you. And it was like something in my attitude shifted where I was still terrified, but I started to get excited because I realized like, okay, well now I can actually write down the dreams and speak the dreams that I have in my heart out loud to you, God. And maybe you'll have something for me and maybe you won't. I don't know. Let's try it out. And so that was a really hard season in my life, but I remember like really started to think about music and how I had always loved music, how I'd always been drawn to music. And I think if anybody, has been in church nowadays, what it always felt like if I was passionate about music, then my lane had to be worship. And that's all that I had known. Like if you love music and you want to pursue music, then it can only be worship. And and to me, that just never fit because I'm just not a musical person. Like you don't want me singing. You don't want me trying to play an instrument. That's not me at all. And so I just kind of always shoved that off to the side. But it was during this time that I just started to like kind of speak that out loud and say, you know what, I think music is dope. I would love to be a part of it in some capacity. I would love to serve it to some capacity. And something that was really cool, which Katie, who is right here to the left of me on my screen right now, I actually had been following her on Instagram for a while, and I knew that, we didn't know each other. I just am, a creeper on Instagram, and I found out who the marketing coordinator was at the time, and I just like ran into her profile, and I was like, oh, she's cool. I could find some inspiration from her. And I remember being like just so amazed that a company like Reach had young employees that were a part of it, and somebody like Katie, who was just about a year and a half, 2 years older than me, and that was doing it. And I think seeing her in that position was really eye-opening for me because I realized like maybe there is a lane for me in this. And there was one day that I went on the Reach website and the job had become available. And I applied for it. I just went for it. I filled out my resume. And yeah, 2 weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks later, is when I had the job. So yeah, so that was kind of my story, was like, exiting what I thought I wanted and what I thought, like there were so many people around me when God told me to leave, everybody around me was like, this doesn't make any sense. You are literally like on your way. You have progress. You have been talking about this for years. You've been set on this. How dare you leave? And people that made me question, whether I was insane or not. And I felt like I was crazy, but I really felt like it was more important for me to move on this word of God than for me to just stay in what I thought and what everybody thought was for me. Because truly what God had for me was beyond, like Khari said, it was beyond what I ever would have dreamed. Like it wasn't until, I had this blank slate and was able to talk to God about how big he was that I allowed myself to even dream about Reach Records and the fact that he was just so good and kind to give me this position and bless me with this team has just been a wild entrance. So
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing as well. I know that like that's a crazy story that like a lot of people would never known about, like how you got to where you are today. So thank you for, sharing a little bit about your life, with us today.
This is actually really good because my story is different than Khari and Dee's. You guys were really heard clearly from the Lord what to do, where to go, and that was not the case to me. For me, I was super paralyzed with indecision. So yeah, I think the biggest transitional period where I exited one season of my life and entered another was when I was 21/22 during those years, transitioning from singleness into marriage, and also graduating college and entering into my career. So yeah, I didn't know how to make decisions at all. I'm like, how do you decide who you want to marry? That's a lifelong commitment. How do you know? God, what do you have for me? Like, God, how do I hear from you and know that it's you and not get confused? And then in terms of not just that decision of marriage, but also my career, my fiance was in medical school, and in medical school in the middle of nowhere. So if we were to get married, I interned at Reach, and then I was working part-time at Reach during the last semester of my senior year. And so I was planning to work there afterwards. But with us getting married and him being in medical school, I was going to have to give up the job, give up my career at Reach, or a few years at Reach. And I didn't want to do that. And I also, at the same time, my husband really hated medical school. So it was even harder to feel like, man, I'm going to have to give this up. And it's not even for something that you're passionate about. And I am passionate about this. So we just had to spend so much time like praying and seeking counsel from people. And I got a recommendation for a book actually that was really transformative for me. It's called Just Do Something by Kevin DeYoung. It's super short. It's like 80 pages. But it was like really transformational to me. And kind of the premise is that like we should spend more time concerned with how we walk with God rather than what exactly it is God wants us to do. Like there's this quote in there that talks about we should spend more time on how to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God as a doctor or a lawyer, and less time worrying about whether God wants us to be a doctor or a lawyer. And that's not, for me, that was like really timely, because it was like, okay, if I love the Lord and I'm really seeking him, I can have freedom to make decisions in this. So we decided that he was going to drop out of medical school, which was like super counter to the way that he was raised. And like there's a lot of family pressure involved with that for him to be a doctor. So he quit with no job and no job prospects, moved back to Atlanta, and I kept my job at Reach and got married. And so that was really an exit from this life that we thought that we were going to live into this life that we ended up living in Atlanta. And it's been really cool to look back and to reflect now 7 years later, and I'm still here, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to like learn so much from our leaders and from the artists, and to be a part of something that I'm so passionate about. My husband found a career that he loves way more than he ever loved medicine. And so it's just been really cool. Like we frequently think back and we're like, man, if we had just gone with the flow instead of asking the questions like, is this really what we want? And disrupting our lives and disrupting the plan that other people have for our lives. We wouldn't be here with the amazing teams that we have and the amazing friends that we have here. So yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I know a lot of people probably would never knew that about you or about your life or, how you even got here today. So thanks for sharing that. I think that'll be helpful for a lot of young people too, because there's people who are in the relationship transition period where they're like, oh, what do I do? And there's even people battling like, oh, well, this is what has been painted to me as the perfect life, and this is my plan, this is the steps. And so even if I don't like it, then it's like, what do I do? And so even that, there's encouragement in that, in terms of like, hey man, like you don't have to be forced to live a life you don't want to live just to impress other people, Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
there were a lot of people that were telling us too, like, well, not a lot of people, but when we sought counsel, we did hear that, like, you're born, you go to school, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, and you do it all over again. And then they go to school and they get a job and they get married and they have kids and they do it all over again. And if you're just walking through the motions of life without any real passion, or any real purpose, and you're just doing like what's been laid out before you, it's a really sad way to live.
So definitely really encouraging. I hope it encourages some people, who may be watching, to step out on faith. Don't be scared. Don't, even if you may look foolish at the time, like, if you're really walking with the Lord, he's on your side. He always works everything out for the good of those who love him. It's in the Bible. So also just remember, like, you won't look foolish in the end. So it's okay.